Welcome to Labor's View. This show is brought to you by the very hard-working and dedicated employees of the Essex County Division of Welfare, the non-managerial employees. I'm David Weiner, president of the union and host of this show, Labor's View. Our guest this evening is a gentleman I've known for some years, Jim Walsh. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks for having me. And
Jim is, I'm going to let you do your own intro in terms of what you're doing now and a little bit of your past.
Sure. So, well, right now I'm the Mid-Atlantic Director for Food and Water Watch. It's a national nonprofit organization. We have an office in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and members throughout the state and throughout the country. We have another office in Brooklyn, New York, and Philadelphia in this region of the country. We also, I guess, well, prior to working at Food and Water Watch, I worked for New Jersey Citizen Action as a program director there, where I oversaw education outreach programs around foreclosure prevention, lead poisoning prevention, and did a lot of work on the campaign to create paid family leave in New Jersey. I've also spent a number of years doing grassroots organizing, directing field canvasses, door-to-door campaigns around a variety of progressive issues like stopping the privatization of Social Security, protecting small farmers.
So you're a professional nudge, as am I.
That's a good way to put it, yes.
And when you were Citizen Action, for disclosure, I don't know if I did then, but I co-chair the board for the number. I did then.
Yeah, you were the co-chair of the board then.
Co-chair the board of Citizen Action, New Jersey Citizen Action, which is a great organization, and you did a great job there, and you're doing a great job now. So let's talk about some of the topics. The one that I'm most interested in, well, there's so many of them, but the one that I find most galling that you're fighting is something called fracking. Why don't you explain what fracking is?
Sure. Well, fracking is, at a very basic level, is a type of gas drilling where literally millions of gallons of water are mixed with a batch of chemicals and sand that are pumped into the earth as a way to break open shale deposits that are located literally thousands of feet below the Earth's crust. And those shale deposits contain natural gas and oil, depending on where they're located. That gas then, after the water is pushed down, the water comes back up, and gas begins to flow out of the well. And
now, the problems with this include the either potentially or actually, because I want you to discuss that documentary that guy did, but when these chemicals go down there, first of all, do we really know what those chemicals are?
Sure. So there's about 7 federal laws that the gas industry has actually been able to exempt themselves from that are meant to protect public health and the environment. So you have the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Superfund, laws that require environmental review of projects. And because of these exemptions, the companies actually don't have to disclose the chemicals that they're using in this process. But something that's important to recognize that even if the companies were required to disclose those chemicals, or even if they were using something like baking soda that is virtually harmless, everybody has in their kitchen sink, what chemicals are coming back up with the water are also very damaging. We're finding that uranium, barium, strontium, radium are all, like, radioactive elements are actually coming up with this waste.
Naturally within the
That's
soil.
right. So the water goes down, but then these radioactive deposits, heavy metals, and known carcinogens have been trapped in the Earth's crust for many, literally millions of years. And when that water comes back up, it brings all of these things to the surface.
Now, when it goes down, the chemicals in the water goes down, and it snakes underneath, right? And the problem is that the aquifers are getting polluted by these chemicals, correct?
Sure. So there's a number of documented cases of water contamination happening through fracking. The industry, for some reason, continues to claim that this practice is safe. There was a study that,
all the time, the commercials.
Sure, and yeah, there's they also talk about their job creation that they're doing, and we're seeing probably the biggest area of job creation is in the PR industry, where they're putting their spin out there, right? But we've actually seen a study come out of North Carolina that looked into methane migration, because that's what this gas is. It's essentially methane into aquifers and drinking water wells near fracking operations, and found a correlation between proximity to the fracking operations and the likelihood of having methane contamination in your well. And there's been a number of videos online that people can go and see where people are actually able to set their tap water on fire.
What was that documentary?
Gasland.
Gasland, right.
And
that was excellent. And that shows, where was that? Was that out west?
It was in Pennsylvania. Most of it was filmed in Pennsylvania. There were some scenes from the movie out in Wyoming and Colorado, I believe.
And they do show the guy running his tap water and hitting a lighter, and then just boom, and just
literally setting it on fire. And it's a major concern from this. The EPA last year, in the Environmental Protection Agency, they, for the first time, actually documented through federal investigation fracking-related chemicals being found in an aquifer in Pavilion, Wyoming. And then we've also seen numerous examples of spills from waste pits. So what happens when this water comes up to the surface, one of the things the industry will do is to actually put these big pits that they dig these holes out and put some rubber lining in and just fill it with this nasty stuff coming up from the Earth's crust. It's mixed with these secret chemicals, all these radioactive elements from the Earth, and they put it in these pits to evaporate off the water. And that makes it so that they have less garbage to get rid of. But there's been numerous instances where those pits, because of rainstorms, have overflowed into creeks and streams. There's been examples where those pits and the liners have failed in those pits. And there's also been the industry itself, through its own admission, says the well casings, which are meant to protect aquifers. So when they drill these holes and they go through aquifers, they actually have concrete and steel liners that they put in. And the industry's own admission is that 40% of those liners will fail within 20 to 30 years, and that 5% of them fail immediately.
Let's bring it home to New Jersey. Now, I understand New Jersey doesn't have either the amount or any Marcellus shale.
So that's what everyone believed up until June of this year. There was a new disclosure that came out through the U.S. Geological Survey. So prior to that, the only assessed and now like real shale basins that we knew about that could potentially be fracked were up in Warren County in the northwestern part of the state in a deposit called Utica Shale. And the Marcellus Shale is the shale deposit that they're fracking in Pennsylvania. And the names really refer to the geological time period that the shales were formed in. So the Utica shales tend to be far deeper and much more difficult to get at than the Marcellus shale is.
What is shale?
Shale is basically a rock formation. Okay. Yeah, where we're finding all of these gas and oil deposits. And so what we've seen now is the U.S. Geological Survey earlier this year, in June, actually released data about a new shale deposit in the Newark Basin. And the Newark Basin basically runs from just kind of west of Trenton in Pennsylvania, under the Delaware River, up through Mercer County, Middlesex, Essex County, into Hudson, Bergen County, and into Rockland County, New York.
So we could possibly see these wells, which, in addition to all the other things you've described, they're very loud, they go 24 hours a day.
Yeah, there's tremendous issues with noise, and there's communities around these areas have had serious problems with air pollution. One of the studies that have been done of these was in Dish, Texas. They actually started monitoring air quality. We're finding benzene in the air due to these fracking operations. Known carcinogen, really nasty stuff you don't want in the air.
Now, the Republicans in particular, but others as well, will say, particularly the industry, because that's really driven the price of gas down, right? It's been very cheap because you have all of a sudden all this abundance, so it's supply and demand, which theoretically is a good thing.
Sure. So we have seen a tremendous drop in natural gas prices, and primarily that is due to the fracking operations that are going on. But that's only part of the story. What's happening right now is the industry is in the process of developing liquefied natural gas facilities off the coast that will actually allow them to take the gas, cool it, and shrink it down to a very small size, and then put it onto ships to be shipped overseas. And so there's the industry is in the process of getting permitting for all of these different natural gas facilities around the country. And what that's going to do is basically open up the U.S. to the global gas market, where in Europe people are paying 4 times as much for gas as they are in the U.S., and in Asia it's up to 6 times as much for gas. And so the industry right now, they don't have the ability to actually move that gas into international markets, so it's really creating this abundance in this region in particular.
Driving down the price.
And driving down the price. And what's really, I think, concerning about this is at the same time the industry is doing all of this fracking and things like that, what we're seeing happen now is this infrastructure is being built around fracking operations. And where we're building gas-fired power plants here in Newark, they're looking at creating a HES plant. Right. There's pipeline infrastructure that is being built to transport gas, and all of this is being done under the auspice that this is going to be a cheap energy source for the future.
They say there's enough for 100 years or something to that effect.
And so right, and that's kind of that's a spacious argument as well, where we've actually seen the last 2 years the U.S. Geological Survey has actually downgraded available shale gas reserves. And 2 years ago they downgraded it by about 80% of projections, and this last year they downgraded about 60% by that, and that's recoverable gas. So when you look at the gas deposits that exist in the country, if you were to get all of it, and be able to get all of it, you might get 100 years. But chances are, and we hope that we're not going to be, fracking in Jersey City, But there very well is shale under there that could be fracked. We hope that. And
I'm sorry. What about the storage of this? That's an issue now. It's the storage of that wastewater you talked about.
Right.
Isn't there a battle to keep it? It's being stored in New Jersey now in various locations.
So there's 3 facilities in New Jersey who've accepted waste from fracking operations, according to Pennsylvania DEP records. Those 3 facilities, 2 of which have accepted solid waste, and another one has accepted liquid waste.
So the solid is after it evaporates, that's the stuff left in those pits?
No, the solid waste is actually drill cuttings from when they actually drill the initial hole. And so that has the drilling fluids in it. It also has, all these radioactive elements and heavy metals and things like that coming back up. And one of the major concerns is, with all of this is, particularly from the Marcellus Shale, which is the waste coming here, is that we know that there is radium coming up in the wastewater, and the byproduct for radium is radon. Radon is a gas. And there's been no federal studies done to look into the radon levels that are in this gas that are actually coming out of these wells.
This waste is being stored in New Jersey.
And so this waste is being stored in New Jersey, and that you have this issue where it's being processed and then plans to dispose of it in the state. There's a bill that's on the governor's desk right now that was passed by the legislature with strong bipartisan support that would actually prohibit the treatment, disposal, storage of this waste in New Jersey. And the governor's been sitting on it. He's refused to take a position on it as of right now. And there's a tremendous outpouring of public support for this. Just last week, over 1,000 people generated phone calls into the governor's office. About 2 weeks ago, with our allies, we delivered about 20,000 petition signatures to the governor. And over 75 organizations who represent labor unions, environmental groups, faith-based organizations, women's groups, community organizations, have all sent letters to the governor on behalf of their organizations asking him to sign this bill into law and make sure that this waste doesn't come into the state.
He's never here, so I guess we'll have to wait till
That's right. Hopefully he's getting his mail forwarded to Iowa and Florida.
Exactly. Now, people would then say to you, okay, natural gas production is so dangerous, and this has bothered me for some. I send you articles that I find, I don't know if you see them or not, but I just send them to you anyway, when I'm up in the middle of the night.
I do, and I appreciate it.
Okay. What is the alternative? Alternative methods, wind, solar, that's really where we should be putting.
Sure, and if you look at our energy development, we have highly subsidized the gas and oil industry, historically in this country, literally throwing billions of dollars in tax breaks or direct subsidies to this industry. And we've given very little to develop renewable, sustainable energy sources in this country. And the gas development is actually doing more to undercut the solar and wind markets because of the low gas prices, is actually making the return on investment for gas and solar lower. So that if you're a business or another entity who's thinking about, well, how are we going to make our business affordable over the next 20 years? You're looking at these low gas prices and what it costs to install solar, and you're like, well, we're going to make our money back on the gas a lot quicker than we will the solar or the wind. So we're going to go with that. And you get the short-term.
Myopic.
Exactly.
In terms of transporting either gas and or oil, there are issues about pipelines. One is a Transco. Transco, and the other one is the Keystone, which has got a lot of press. What's the deal with these?
So, well, the Transco pipeline is one that affects people in this area pretty tremendously. It actually goes through the Wanacue Reservoir, which provides drinking water for close to, I think, 3 million people when you combine it with another reservoir in North Jersey. And so this pipeline is actually being targeted for public lands, and that's why it goes through that area, because the companies that build these pipelines that transport this gas are actually able to pay pennies on the dollar to to build these pipelines through public lands as opposed to going through private lands. It costs them a significant more. Where this poses a problem for New Jersey is we very consciously have bought up public lands and parks to protect drinking water sources. So as these pipelines are being built, they're actually being built through public lands that were actually used to preserve drinking water sources and make sure those areas are protected.
And the danger is?
Well, you can see runoff from these pipelines. You're basically industrializing, an area that was put together to, make this area, make sure that we are protecting the runoff. These are big industrial projects that go through massive backhoes and bulldozers and things like that. Will come through in these areas. The Keystone pipeline, the other pipeline you talked about, goes through basically the middle of the country, a little bit more to the west in the mountain region, down through the Midwest into Louisiana, Texas, and so this pipeline is actually being constructed to basically transport tar sands.
Explain
which is tar sands are basically another type of extreme energy, and I think this really speaks to the fact that we've tapped all the easy gas, we've tapped all the easy oil, and now we're going after fracking, now we're going after tar sands, and it's this mix of really sandy, soily oil. And they put this through. They want to put this through a pipeline and take it to refineries in the Gulf Coast that would allow them to then take this refined oil and ship it easily into international markets.
That's the irony, of course, here is that ostensibly the main purpose that a lot of people, such as Romney and others, push for these type of sources of energy versus clean energy. Is that it'll keep, we don't have to import from Saudi Arabia and other places and keep us, yet we're really exporters of it.
Well, these resources are a commodity, right? They're bought and sold to the highest bidder. It's whoever is willing to pay the most for it. And these companies have no loyalty to the U.S. or any other place. They're really loyal to the almighty dollar and wherever they can sell their product for the most.
In fact, doesn't Romney want to allow drilling off the coast of Virginia and someplace else?
Yeah, so there's plans going through, right now that are being considered, and there's I think Republicans and Democrats alike, share some of the blame and some of the opposition to coastal drilling. It's a mixed bag. Romney has spoken very strongly about allowing coastal drilling to go forward. There's actually rules going on right now that would allow for seismic testing off the Atlantic coast, and that would be done to assess gas and oil reserves in the Atlantic coast. And so that seismic testing, you can also, why would they be looking for it unless they were going to do it? But the seismic testing will actually be paid for by the taxpayers. So you and I are going to be funding this offshore research that's going to be then handed over to the gas and oil industry so they can find where the oil and gas is, and we all pay for it.
And of course we're worried about things such as what happened down in New Orleans.
It would be devastating to New Jersey's economy. We have one of the largest fishing operations down in Cape May in the country.
Which has its own problems because of the depletion of the stock, so we're already having issues
This will make it certainly much worse and much more challenging for that. There's, the tourism industry in the state is a tremendous part of our state's revenue. Right. People are not going to go to beach homes, and they are not going to go to the Jersey Shore if we have oil lapping up on our beach. And the residents here in the state who enjoy that too will lose that beautiful public resource that we all have.
Just as an aside, that seismic testing, is that the type of stuff that the Navy is doing that's affecting sea animals such as whales?
Yeah, there's a lot of concerns. Dolphins and whales in particular being impacted by this.
Is it sensitive because of their
hearing, right, and how they communicate? Yeah, so there's a lot of concerns about the impacts that we'll have.
A lot of beaching of whales and
to the seismic testing. Yeah,
so it's wonderful. process going on here. Okay, so your Food and Water Watch. Food. One big issue you have is the issue of growing of grains and other foods that are genetically modified. What's the concern there? What does that mean, genetically modified?
Sure. So genetically engineered foods are basically a food product that has been altered in a lab to take genes from one entity and insert it into another entity. And the primary reason that we're genetically engineering foods right now in the United States is to either have those plants that grow not be killed by nasty herbicides like Roundup and 2,4-D. 2,4-D is incidentally half the ingredients of Agent Orange. It's Agent Orange without dioxin.
Which is what was used for the younger folks in Vietnam to destroy and then we had our soldiers come home. One of my best friends died of lung cancer from Agent Orange.
Tremendous. And there's number of documented cases of birth defects and lingering effects in Vietnam from the spraying of Vietnam.
So Dow manufactured Agent Orange. I remember protesting that back in the 60s. So don't laugh at me, because I was in the 60s. We had that discussion about age. Are they still involved?
Yeah, Dow is one of the bigger promoters of genetically engineered foods in the country today, as well as BASF. Monsanto is probably one of the well-known genetically engineered companies. DuPont is also involved in
so
the
what's
industry
the problem?
as well.
It's supposed to, the companies say it's supposed to provide hardier and more sustainable food, provide more food resources, especially when, I assume, not just in the United States, but overseas, in particular Africa and places where there are food shortages.
Well, it's interesting. Well, there's a couple of things. You just asked a big issue there, but one is, the seed companies that are making these seeds are also chemical companies. So so they're actually making money on selling the seeds and then making the money on selling the chemicals that are sprayed on these seeds so that they aren't killed. They kill everything else, but not the seeds. And then we're eating that food that was sprayed with these chemicals, right?
Eating it, brother.
Well, that's true. I try to do that. But, at a very basic level, consumers have no right to know if these foods have been genetically engineered. You have the right to know if there's trans fats or peanuts in your food.
I thought there was a bill. Maybe I guess people have proposed it, but it didn't go through. But I thought there was supposed to be
There's legislation right now. Assemblywoman Stender, Senator Vitale, Senator Singer, and Assemblyman Wolf have all introduced a bill that would actually require labeling of genetically engineered foods in New Jersey. If New Jersey were to move that legislation, we'd be the first state in the country to actually take that step. There's a ballot initiative that's happening in California this year that would require labeling of genetically engineered foods. All the European Union countries, a number of countries in South and Central America all require labeling of these foods. We're really behind the curve in giving consumers a basic right to know about these products being sold in their stores.
And the danger of eating these foods is what? What's the concern?
So there's just a lack of data that's out there. There's been some peer-reviewed studies that have come up on animals and things that have shown, kidney failure and other serious, problems that happen in animals that are fed these genetically engineered crops. What we're doing right now is a massive experiment on the American public. All the research that FDA evaluates to determine public health is provided to them by the very industries that actually grow and own the patents on these seeds. So there's no real independent government research and oversight into this. It's them giving the FDA information, the FDA saying, oh, thank you very much, you say it's safe, it must be safe, and let's move on. We took that advice from the tobacco industry for years, and look where that got us.
It reminds me of when I grew up in the 50s, as did Jerry, so don't laugh at me, but better living through chemicals. That was the expression, right? Through chemistry. So we're really back to square one some 50 years later, right?
Yeah, we've taken some tremendous steps back, and very much so. So back to the question you'd asked about the development of, feeding the world, right? And that we should be feeding the world. And I think that when you actually look at that, argument, there's a tremendous number of problems with that. And we look at the consolidation of the food system as doing more to actually cause starvation around the globe than it's doing to actually provide as food to communities. And so if you, let's take trade agreements. One of the major parts in every trade agreement the U.S. signs has to do with agricultural products. And one of the major things that happens is there's provisions in these trade agreements that allow for highly subsidized U.S. agricultural commodities to be shipped into developing countries. The immediate impact on that is that local subsistence farmers that have been growing food to feed their communities can no longer compete with that. Those farmers are then pushed into urban areas where they can then, because of unemployment, get jobs working in sweatshops to be able to ship products back to the U.S., where the farmers that are able to survive are moved into commodity crops, where they'll grow teas, coffees, mangoes that are then exported into a global marketplace and aren't used anymore to feed local communities in those areas. And that creates a dynamic where one crop failure, because of a large-scale crop, you have a drought or something like that, where all you're growing is one food,
we've had this year
right? And we're experiencing here in the U.S. You're going to see dramatic increases in food prices. You're going to see a dramatic drop in the economy because you're not going to be able to export those crops to be able to bring revenue in. And then the solution is, oh, well, we need to ship them rice and we need to ship them corn. Well, that's, you know, giving them the same poison that got them into the situation where they're in to begin with. And what we really should be doing is promoting sustainable agriculture, both internationally and in the U.S., and helping to develop local and regional food systems that ensure that people can get access to quality, locally produced foods instead of relying on foods that have been shipped across the world in a global commodity market, which makes a lot of money for companies like ADM and Cargill, but is contributing largely to the global hunger and famine epidemics that we're seeing around the globe.
We only have a couple of minutes, and a really big issue is the privatization of water. You're involved with fighting the creation of the MUA?
Yes, the Newark Municipal Utility Authority.
What's that about, in 1 minute?
The Municipal Utility Authority would very simply is take control of Newark's water away from the council and the people of Newark and put it under control of an appointed board that would have very little public accountability.
And what's wrong with that? What's the concern?
Well, there's a massive global movement going on right now to by corporations to buy up and control all of the water resources in the country and put them into tradable markets where they would own water delivery systems, water, that provide tap water to municipalities. So a number of municipalities have been fighting water privatization directly outside of Newark. We're concerned that creating this MUA would be a step towards actually selling off or potentially leasing parts of the system to private water companies.
Now, Mayor Booker supports the creation of this MUA.
He wholeheartedly. And, we released a report a couple of weeks ago actually documenting Mayor Booker's connections to private equity firms and how those private equity firms are actually benefiting from water privatization.
Connections in terms of political donations?
Tremendous political donations he's received from Wall Street and other investors.
There's a big vote coming up, right, with the council?
Yeah, the vote will actually be this evening.
Oh.
And they'll be voting tonight, 6 p.m., to decide whether or not to allow the MUA to be created.
Prognosticate, what do you think?
There's a strong citizens movement that's actually put forward a petition to the Municipal Utility Authority, or to the City Council, that would actually create a mandate that a director be appointed by the governor or by the mayor, as well as to establish feedback mechanisms between the water director and the municipal council to help ensure that Newark's water system is actually getting the proper attention it needs. Yeah, I think that has a good chance of passing. There's certainly 3 people on the council that have said they're going to vote for it, and there's 4 people who aren't saying anything. So it's hard to say where those 4 are going to. Yeah, right. It's hard to say where those 4 are going to come down.
You've said so much in such little time. You've got to come back, and I know you will.
Love to.
Because this stuff is so important, and I think the folks watching will realize that it affects their lives in so many ways.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah.
And thank you for watching Labor's View. I'm David Weiner. We hope to see you on future shows. Good evening.